Valentina Wells punches a bleeding stranger in the chest at 3 in the morning in a Seattle diner, performing emergency CPR to restart his heart. What she did not know was that the man dying under her hands was Lorenzo Moreno, the most powerful Mafia boss on the West Coast. The dry October cold cut through the cracked diner window like a blade, her breath visible in clouds as fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting shadows across the black and white checkered floor. The man in the expensive black suit stumbles through the glass door, blood soaking his white shirt like spilled wine. 2 other men in dark suits rush in behind him, their voices sharp and desperate. "Boss! Boss, stay with us!" The bleeding man's knees buckle. His body collapses onto the tile floor with a sound like something breaking inside a building. Everyone in that diner freezes. The night shift cook stops moving. The only other customer, a homeless man nursing black coffee, turns away slowly. The fluorescent lights hum and flicker. In the silence, there is only the sound of shallow breathing and leather shoes scraping tile. Valentina Wells is sitting at the counter, still wearing her hospital scrubs, still wearing the stains from a double shift that ended 4 hours ago. She is counting money. Not quarters, not dollars. Crumpled bills that add up to $17. That is all she has. $17 to last her until Friday. The foreclosure notice is still on her kitchen table at home, stamped with numbers that do not make sense. $47,000 due in 7 days. She had read it 3 times, thinking maybe the numbers would change, maybe she had misread them. She had not. So she counts her money at 3 in the morning in a diner that smells like old grease and burnt coffee, trying to figure out how to feed her son Oliver when the banks take the house. The bleeding man's body goes rigid. His back arches. Then nothing. No breathing. No movement. The 2 suited men stand frozen, hands reaching toward weapons they know will not save him. "Call 911, one of them says, but his voice sounds small, swallowed by the fluorescent humming. Valentina moves. She does not think. She does not hesitate. Her body remembers what her brain had learned 2 years ago in a hospital certification course she had paid for with money she did not have. She drops to her knees beside the man. His skin is still warm. His eyes are half open, staring at nothing. She reaches down and rips open his shirt, buttons scattering across the floor like scattered teeth. His chest is massive, muscular, covered in scars that run in every direction like a map of something terrible. His heart is not beating. "What the hell are you doing?" the suited man shouts. His hand moves toward his jacket. "Stand back," Valentina says. Her voice is different now. Not the voice of a tired woman counting coins. This voice is steel. This voice knows what to do. She tilts his head back, opens his mouth, breathes into him twice. The taste of blood and expensive cologne fills her mouth. She positions her hands on his chest, right over his heart, and pushes down hard. The crack of his ribs is audible. She counts aloud. 1, 2, 3. 30 compressions. 2 breaths. Again. Her hands move like they belong to someone else, someone who has done this before, someone who knows that 30 seconds is forever and eternity is only 3 minutes. She is killing him, Vinny says. Vinny is the older one, 52 years old, with a scar running from his eye to his cheekbone like a lightning bolt. He has been with Lorenzo for 16 years. In 16 years, he has never seen anyone touch the boss and live. No, Sal says. Sal is younger, 34, with dark eyes and hands that have done things that require years of therapy. She is saving him. The man gasps. His eyes flutter open. His body convulses, coughing, blood spraying from his mouth onto Valentina's face. She sits back, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. Blood smears across her cheek. She is breathing hard. Her scrubs are soaked. Her hands are shaking, but not from fear. From adrenaline. From the absolute certainty that she just kept someone alive. "Call 911, she says. Now. His left side is compromised. Possible pneumothorax. He needs a hospital. Sal already has his phone in his hand. He is dialing. The man on the floor is breathing now, shallow and ragged, but breathing. His eyes are open. They are dark grey, like the sky before a storm, and they are staring directly at Valentina Wells. He is looking at her like he is seeing her for the first time, like she is something impossible, like she is something that should not exist in his world. In 15 years of ruling Seattle's underworld, Lorenzo Moreno had been shot at, poisoned, betrayed, and hunted. But he had never been struck by a woman whose hands were saving his life instead of taking it. The ambulance arrives in 7 minutes. The paramedics rush in with equipment and urgent voices. They push Valentina aside gently. She steps back, watching them work, watching them stabilize him, watching them load him onto a stretcher. One of the paramedics looks at her. "You did CPR?" "Yes," Valentina says. "You probably saved his life," the paramedic says. 2 more minutes without oxygen and his brain would have been gone. Valentina nods. She does not feel anything. She is already thinking about the hospital bill on her kitchen table. She is already thinking about the $17 in her pocket. She is already thinking about how she is supposed to tell Oliver that the house is gone. The paramedics wheel him out. Vinny and Sal move to follow, but before Vinny disappears through the door, he looks back at Valentina Wells. His scar seems darker in the fluorescent light. He nods once. A small gesture, barely noticeable, but it means something. It means she is not invisible. It means something has changed. The diner is quiet again. The fluorescent lights hum. The homeless man returns to his coffee. The cook returns to whatever small tasks night shifts require. Valentina returns to the counter, to her 17 crumpled dollars, to her counting. But what happened next was something no one could explain. Before we continue, drop a like if this story hits you. Share it with someone who needs to hear it and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming tomorrow. Now, let us go back to the beginning. 6 months earlier. The foreclosure notice is not yet on her kitchen table. The hospital bill is not yet stamped with final notice in red ink. Her late husband Marcus has been dead for 6 months, and the debts he left behind are still arriving, one legal letter at a time. Valentina works double shifts at Harborview Hospital, 12 hours followed by 8 hours at the diner, sleeping 4 hours, waking up to Oliver's voice saying, "Mommy, I am hungry." He is 7 years old. He does not understand that they're drowning. Children have a way of not understanding that the world around them is collapsing. The apartment is small. 1 bedroom where Oliver sleeps. A living room where Valentina sleeps on a couch that smells like mildew no matter how many times she washes the cushions. The kitchen has a refrigerator that makes a sound like an animal dying, a grinding noise that starts at midnight and continues until dawn. The walls are thin. She can hear the neighbor's television through the drywall. She can hear their arguments. She can hear them living their lives, which means they have more than she does. She counts money every night. Not because it is therapeutic. Because it is necessary. She needs to know exactly how much she does not have. Tonight, the numbers add up to $47,000. That is what she owes. That is what the bank says will be taken if she cannot pay. 7 days. 1 week. If she worked 3 shifts a day, she could not earn $47,000 in 7 days. If she sold every possession she owned, she would not have $47,000. If she sold her son's toys, her mother's jewelry box, the 1 piece of silver her grandmother brought over from Italy 70 years ago, she still would not have $47,000. She has $17. She counts it 3 times to make sure. Crumpled 1s and 5s, some bills so worn the numbers are barely visible. 17. That is what stands between her and total collapse. That is what remains after 6 months of paying hospital bills, funeral costs, and rent on an apartment that is about to be taken from her anyway. The kitchen is cold. She turns off the light to save electricity. She sits in the dark, listening to the refrigerator growl, listening to the neighbor's television through the wall, listening to Oliver breathing in the next room. He sleeps with his door open because he is afraid of the dark. He has been afraid of the dark since his father died. Since the funeral. Since someone handed him a program with his father's picture on it and asked if he wanted to say goodbye to Daddy. Valentina has not cried since the funeral. Her tears had dried up somewhere between the hospital where Marcus died and the cemetery where they buried him. She had walked to the grave like someone moving through water, holding Oliver's hand, watching the coffin lower into the ground, and feeling absolutely nothing. Emptiness is not sadness. Emptiness is what happens when there is nothing left to feel. She needs to sleep. Tomorrow starts at 5 in the morning. The hospital shift first. Then the diner. Then home at midnight. Then counting money. Then sleep for 4 hours. Then Oliver wakes up hungry, and the cycle repeats itself. That is her life now. That is what her life has become. She stands up slowly, her knees cracking. She is 29 years old, but she feels decades older. Her hands are calloused from hospital work. Her back aches from bending over patients. Her eyes are hollow from the particular exhaustion that comes not from hard work but from the impossible choice between eating and paying bills. 3 hours later, Oliver wakes up. "Mommy, I had a bad dream." "Come here," Valentina says. She lifts him into her bed. He is getting too big for this. Soon he will be too old to want his mother. Soon he will be a teenager who thinks she is embarrassing. But right now, at 7 years old, he still wants his mother to make the dark go away. She does not tell him about the foreclosure notice. She does not tell him about the money. She does not tell him that in 7 days, his bedroom will belong to someone else. She just holds him, listening to his breathing slow, listening to him fall asleep, listening to the world remain quiet for a few hours before it starts again. This is how her life is. Counting. Holding. Surviving. Then she punches a stranger in the chest at 3 in the morning, and everything changes. 3 days before the diner. 3 days before everything fractures and reforms into a shape she never imagined. The apartment is cold. October in Seattle means a particular kind of damp chill that seeps through the walls no matter how many times you cork the windows, and Valentina Wells stands at the kitchen counter in the pale gray dawn, watching her breath form small clouds in the air. The hospital bill lies spread before her like an indictment. Final notice stamped across the top in red ink that looks like blood. $47,000. She reads the number again. 47,000. The surgery Marcus needed after the accident, the 3 weeks in intensive care, the machines that beeped and hummed and kept him alive for exactly 22 days before his heart simply stopped beating. The debt paper she signed without reading because the man in the hospital corridor said her husband would die without the procedure, and a wife does not calculate the cost of her husband's life. A wife just says yes. A wife signs the papers. A wife watches him die anyway. 7 days to pay. The notice is dated October 18th. Today is October 19th, 6 days now. She counts the cash in her wallet for the 100th time. A $10 bill, 2 5s, and 7 1s. $17. This is what stands between her and homelessness. This is the barrier between survival and catastrophe, and it is so thin you could tear it. Mommy. Oliver sits at the kitchen table, his spoon clinking against the ceramic bowl. He is 6 years old and he looks exactly like his father, down to the small scar above his left eyebrow that came from falling off a jungle gym 3 years ago. Why are the lights different? She has replaced the bulbs. Switched them out last week for the cheaper kind that cast a sallow, almost greenish tint across everything. The expensive bulbs cost 90 cents each, and 90 cents multiplied by 10 rooms adds up to $9. $9 she does not have. Just trying something new, baby, she says, and the smile she forces onto her face feels like a mask made of paper. You like it? He shrugs and returns to his cereal. He is 6. He does not understand that his mother is drowning. He does not understand that the apartment around him, the one with his bedroom and his toys and his life, belongs to the bank now. He does not understand any of this. She doesn't tell him. She finishes her black coffee and starts getting ready for work. The shifts blur together. 12 hours at Seattle General Hospital, 8 to 8, her feet moving across linoleum floors that somehow manage to be both ice-cold and sticky at the same time. She works the medical ward, changing 4 bags for patients who sleep or stare at the ceiling or cry quietly into their pillows because their bodies are failing them and there is nothing anyone can do but make them comfortable. An 84-year-old man with congestive heart failure. A 42-year-old woman recovering from a hysterectomy. A teenager who tried to die and is now in the psychiatric hold, watched constantly so she does not try again. Valentina moves between them like a ghost. She takes blood pressure readings. She empties bedpans. She listens to an elderly man tell her the same story about his grandchildren 3 times in one shift, and the 3rd time she laughs at the same jokes because that is kindness and kindness costs nothing. Her supervisor, Dr. Ellison, is a man in his 50s with expensive shoes and a gold wedding band that catches the fluorescent light. He hands her the schedule without looking up from his computer. You're down for overnight tomorrow. 2 a.m. to noon. Sound okay? Overnight means danger pay. $5 an hour more. $50 more than a standard shift. In a week where she owes $47,000, $50 feels like both everything and nothing. Yes, she says. Thank you. You look exhausted, he says, still not looking at her. She nods, because what else is there to say? She is exhausted. She is exhausted in a way that sleep cannot fix because sleep is only temporary and she wakes up to the same problem, the same numbers, the same impossible mathematics of her life. The shift ends at 8 in the morning. She goes home, checks on Oliver, who is still asleep in his small bed with his stuffed rabbit clutched to his chest. She leaves a note for Mrs. Chen, the neighbor who watches him, reminders about lunch and homework and bedtime. Then she walks to the bus stop. The morning is cold, the kind of cold that makes your teeth ache. The diner is on Pike Street. It has been there since 1987, according to the faded sign above the door. The interior smells like coffee and burnt butter and something ineffably sad, like all diners do. The floors are black and white checkered linoleum, worn smooth in the paths where feet have walked for 36 years. The booths are red vinyl, cracked and repaired with duct tape. The counter has 8 stools. Valentina sits at the counter because booths are for people with company, and she has not had company in 8 months. She orders coffee from Rita, who has worked here since the 80s and who has the face of someone who has learned not to ask questions. Just coffee? Rita asks. Just coffee. Rita returns with a mug so full the brown liquid laps at the edge, threatening to spill. She pours with the casual expertise of someone who has done this 10,000 times. You look like you're about to fall asleep standing up. When's the last time you slept? Valentina does not answer. She stirs her coffee, which she cannot afford, and counts the $17 again because counting it gives her something to do with her hands. The diner is empty except for a drunk man in the corner booth who is using the table as a pillow, and a businessman in a suit that costs more than everything Valentina owns, checking his phone with the expression of someone perpetually disappointed by the world. The neon signs in the window buzz with an electrical hum that has probably been there so long the people who work here do not hear it anymore. Rita leans against the counter. Look, I'm not supposed to do this, but she slides a plate across the counter. Apple pie, still warm. On the house. Valentina's throat tightens. She did not know she needed this until it was in front of her. Rita, I can't. Eat it, Rita says. Her voice is flat, not unkind, just factual. You're scaring me. The pie tastes like apples and cinnamon and someone caring about her. She eats it slowly, making it last, because the next meal is uncertain and she has learned to never take anything for granted. The coffee is bitter and strong. The pie is sweet. The combination is almost nice. Outside, the October morning continues its grey progression. The dead leaves that have collected on the sidewalk skitter across the concrete when the wind picks up. A bus passes. A car. An ambulance somewhere distant, its siren wailing in a way that sounds like grief. The clock on the diner wall reads for 41 a.m. Then everything goes quiet. Not a peaceful quiet. A sudden quiet, like a held breath before the impact. The kind of quiet that arrives just before something breaks. The neon buzz seems to pause. Even the drunk man in the corner booth stops snoring. Outside, the sound of an engine. Not a normal engine. Something powerful, something expensive. The kind of engine that costs more than her annual salary just in the parts. The black SUV screams around the corner with its tires smoking. The sound of tires smoking is like a scream made of rubber. The vehicle pulls up to the curb outside the diner with such force that the windows rattle in their frames. The businessman in the suit looks up from his phone. Rita's hand freezes mid-wipe of a glass. Valentina does not turn around. She sits very still, a coffee cup suspended halfway to her lips. The SUV door opens. Fast. The kind of movement that comes from training, from muscle memory, from men who have learned to move like weapons. A man stumbles out of the vehicle. He is tall, maybe 6'1", broad-shouldered in a way that suggests expensive gym membership and personal training. His white dress shirt is soaked in blood. Not a small amount. Enough blood that it has turned half the fabric from white to crimson. His dark hair is matted. His face is pale, grey in a way that means shock, that means his body is shutting down. He takes 3 steps toward the diner. His hand reaches for the door. He collapses before his fingers touch the frame. His body hits the concrete with the sound of something final. Rita makes a noise, a small sound of shock and recognition. That's, oh my God, that's. But Valentina is already moving. She is already running toward the door, her mind not calculating, not thinking about the $17 or the foreclosure notice or the impossible weight of $47,000. Her hands are moving, pushing through the diner door, moving toward the man like she is pulled by something she cannot name. His eyes are open. Storm gray, the color of water before a hurricane. Dark blood pools beneath him, spreading across the concrete like spilled wine, and he is trying to speak but the words are not coming. His fingers reach for her jacket. She does not think. She acts. For hours after Valentina's hands pressed against Lorenzo Moreno's chest in that Seattle diner, the hospital fluorescent lights hummed their cold electric song. The clock on the ER wall read 7 in the morning. October sun, pale and thin, cut through the windows in bars of shadow and light. She stood at the sink in the staff bathroom, scrubbing his blood from beneath her fingernails. The water ran pink, then clear, but the antiseptic smell clung to everything, to her skin, her hair, the fabric of her scrubs. She could not get it out. She could not get any of it out. A knock. Gentle. Her supervisor's voice from the hallway. Valentina? When you're finished, can you come to my office? There are 2 men here to see you. Her hands went still under the running water. 2 men. The phrase carried weight, carried dread, carried the kind of thing that meant her careful, invisible life was about to become very visible. She dried her hands on a paper towel, watching her reflection in the mirror. Dark circles carved beneath her eyes. Hair pulled into a bun so tight it made her temples ache. She looked like what she was, a woman working 70-hour weeks, a woman counting pennies, a woman barely surviving. Not someone who should be visited by men in her supervisor's office. They were waiting in the hallway outside the office door. The 2 men from the diner. Vinny and Sal. Vinny was the taller one, maybe 6'3", built like he had spent the last 20 years lifting heavy things and making difficult decisions. His suit was charcoal gray, the fabric so fine it seemed to absorb light. Sal stood slightly behind him, broader, older, with a scar that ran from his left eye down to his jaw like a permanent expression of violence. Their shoes were so polished they caught the fluorescent light. Everything about them screamed money. Everything about them screamed danger. Vinny stepped forward. His voice was soft, but it had the texture of something sharp wrapped in velvet. "Miss Wells, our employer would like to thank you personally." Valentina's stomach dropped. She shook her head. "I was just doing my job. I don't need thanks. I'm a nurse. That's what we do." Sal's expression did not change. It was not a request. They did not touch her, but somehow she was moving anyway, walking toward the exit as if her legs had already made the decision her mind was still fighting. The diner parking lot felt like a lifetime ago, and it had been less than 4 hours. The man on the concrete. His eyes opening. Storm gray. The kind of eyes that had seen more violence than mercy, more power than peace. The black SUV was waiting at the curb outside the hospital. Tinted windows. Engine running. Sal opened the rear door. She climbed in, and the door closed with a kind of heavy, final sound that meant she had crossed a threshold she could not uncross. The drive took 12 minutes. Vinny rode in the front passenger seat. Neither man spoke. The city moved past the windows, coffee shops opening, people hurrying to work, the ordinary machinery of morning that had nothing to do with her. The SUV climbed Capitol Hill, the streets becoming steeper, the buildings older, the character of the neighborhood shifting from working class to something that required old money to live there. They pulled up to a restaurant called Vittoria. The windows were dark. No customers. A closed sign hung on the door, but when Sal opened it, there was no resistance. The owner had already unlocked it from the inside. The man sitting alone at the corner table by the window was not the man from the diner. This man was clean. His dark hair, which had been matted with blood, was now swept back from his face in waves of perfect symmetry. The white dress shirt was replaced with a tailored button-down, navy blue, open at the collar to show his chest. A gold watch caught the light on his left wrist. His face was pale still, recovery pale, but his eyes were conscious, aware, studying her the way a general studies a battlefield. Lorenzo Moreno stood when she entered. 6'1", maybe 6'2", broad-shouldered in the way that comes from power more than exercise. The scar ran from his left eye down to his cheekbone, and instead of making him look scarred, it made him look marked. Marked by something. Chosen by something. His voice, when he spoke, was like thunder with a quiet accent, Italian underneath everything, softened by years in Seattle but never erased. "Miss Wells. Please sit." She remained standing. "How do you know my name?" "I know everything about everyone who touches my life." "You saved it." "I owe you a debt." The words hung there. Simple. Absolute. A statement of fact from a man who did not make requests or apologies or small talk. She crossed her arms, a barrier against whatever was happening. "You don't owe me anything. I'm a nurse. That's what I do." He gestured to the chair. "Sit. Please." She sat today. Her legs made the decision for her again. Up close, she could see the exhaustion behind his eyes, the precise way he was controlling his breathing, the cost of keeping his body upright while it was still knitting itself back together. He had a hole in his chest, or had, before she punched the hole in his ribs to restart his heart. She had felt his sternum crack beneath her palms. She had heard the sound it made. "Your husband died 3 years ago," he said. Not a question. A recitation. A construction accident. Scaffolding failure on the Seattle Commons project. You did not know about his debts until the creditors arrived. $47,000. 6 days and 12 hours remaining on the foreclosure notice for your apartment. You have been working at Seattle General for 18 months. Before that, you worked 2 jobs simultaneously, night shifts at St. Mary's and day shifts at a diner in Pioneer Square. You have a son named Oliver. He is 6 years old. His father's death broke something in him that you have been trying to repair ever since. She could not breathe. The restaurant, which had seemed warm, seemed suddenly airless. "How do you?" He slid an envelope across the table. "White. thick. Consider it paid. She stared at it. Her hands would not move. I can't accept this. You already saved my life. This is not charity. It is balance. I don't know who you are, but I don't want your money. She stood. The chair scraped backward. The sound echoed in the empty restaurant like an accusation. His expression did not change. I am someone who takes care of his debts. And his people. I'm not your people. You are now. The words followed her as she backed toward the door, her heart hammering so hard she could taste it in her throat. She pushed through the restaurant door into the dry October cold, and she did not look back, but she could feel him watching through the window. She could feel it like a weight, like gravity, like something that had shifted in the universe and would not shift back. 3 blocks away, Douglas Hale stood in the parking lot of a coffee shop, watching her walk past on the sidewalk below. He had followed the black SUV from the hospital. He had waited outside Victoria like a ghost, watching through the windows as the man from the diner met with the nurse he had been stalking for 6 months. Douglas was 34, with the kind of face that had been handsome before it was ruined by anger. His brown eyes had gone hard with it, the softness burned away. He had been a cop once, before the drinking and the violence made that impossible. His cousin had helped him disappear from the force quietly, without record, without trial. Now he worked security, a title that meant nothing, a job that was just a place to collect money while he waited for Valentina to understand that she could not leave him. The way she had left him 2 years ago. The restraining order meant nothing. The police reports meant nothing, his cousin made sure of that. But this man. This meant something different. This meant someone was moving into his territory, and Douglas could not allow that. Not without a response. He pulled out his phone. Made a call. Marcus? It's Hale. We need to talk about the girl. Meanwhile, across the city in a penthouse apartment that overlooked Puget Sound like a throne overlooking a kingdom, Margaret Harrington sat at her marble breakfast table with her phone pressed to her ear. She was 53 years old, and she had spent every day since her cousin Victoria's death 10 years ago building a shrine to the woman's memory. Not in any obvious way. Nothing that would make her look ridiculous. But in the subtle choices, the donations made in Victoria's name, the scholarships established in her honor, the way Margaret had inserted herself into every memory of Lorenzo Moreno's marriage. She was his family. His tribe. The last keeper of the sacred connection to his dead wife. Until 3 days ago, when a nurse saved his life. Margaret had already made 17 phone calls. To her friend Cassandra, who ran the junior league. To Dr. Sterling, who sat on the hospital board. To her ex-husband, who knew people in the right places. She had spent the morning planting seeds, small comments about a woman drowning in her dead husband's debts, a nurse at the hospital, someone clearly taking advantage of Lorenzo's grief. By lunchtime, the narrative was already spreading through Seattle's wealthy circles like a virus. Poor. Desperate. Climbing. Exactly the kind of woman who would hurt him. She smiled into her phone. Yes, thank you for calling me back. I just wanted you to know that I'm concerned about him. She's clearly not appropriate for his world. He's fragile right now, and someone like that, she paused, letting the silence do the work. Well, I just wanted his friends to be aware. That evening, Valentina returned to her apartment to find the door ajar. The hinges creaked when she pushed it open. Her breath caught. She reached for the light switch. Her living room had been torn apart. Drawers pulled from the coffee table, their contents scattered across the floor. The framed photos of Marcus and Oliver smashed into the carpet, glass glinting like teeth. Her kitchen cabinets were open, plates removed from the shelves and stacked neatly, almost lovingly, on the counter. Someone had spent time here. Someone had made it personal. On the kitchen table, written on the back of a grocery receipt in handwriting she knew better than her own handwriting, was a single line, "You can't hide from me, Val. I'm always watching." Douglas Hale. Of course. It was always Douglas. She called 911. The dispatcher who answered sounded like she was reading a script she had memorized but did not believe. If there's no immediate threat to your person or your child, we can file a report, but response times for break-ins without evidence of robbery are. Valentina hung up. She sat on the edge of her bed in the dark, shaking, and her eyes caught on the envelope she had left on the kitchen counter that morning. Unopened. Still sealed. She had been trying very hard not to think about it, the way you try not to think about a gun sitting in your house. But now she stood and walked to the kitchen. Now she opened it. $47,000 in cashier's checks. Exact amount. Exact signature on the memo line, LM. She closed her eyes. The next morning, she put on her cleanest clothes, black slacks, a white blouse, and took a car service into Capitol Hill. She told herself it was a mistake. She told herself she should run, disappear with Oliver to somewhere Douglas could not find them. But her legs carried her up the steps of Victoria anyway, and Vinny was waiting at the door, and he opened it without asking who she was or why she was there. Lorenzo sat at the same table. Same morning light through the windows. He looked up from his newspaper as she approached. A flicker of something moved through his eyes, surprise, maybe, or satisfaction. Miss Wells. She Saturday. Her hands were steady. She had decided, somewhere between the parking lot and the restaurant, that she would not pretend. I need your help. He folded the newspaper slowly. Each motion deliberate. Tell me. She told him everything. About Douglas. The 2-year relationship that had started like romance and twisted into something suffocating. The first time he hit her, he cried afterward and promised it would never happen again. The second time, she called the police. The third time, the officers who responded made it clear, without saying the words directly, that she had caused this herself. They knew Douglas. His cousin was on the force. There was nothing they could do. He disappeared when I got the restraining order, she said quietly. For 6 months. I thought it was over. But then 3 months ago, he started appearing, at my work, at the grocery store, at Oliver's school. I filed more reports. Nothing happened. Lorenzo's expression had not changed. His eyes were the same storm gray as before, but something in them had shifted toward cold. Vinny and Sal, standing at a discreet distance, exchanged a glance neither had made in 15 years of working for him. The boss was leaning forward. The boss was listening the way a predator listens when you tell it where the prey is hiding. His full name, Lorenzo said. Douglas Hale. But the police won't. He was already pulling out his phone. One call. He did not raise his voice, did not threaten anyone. He simply said, pull everything you can find on a Douglas Hale. I want addresses, employment history, financial records, family connections. And find out which precinct has a Sergeant Hale working there. Call me back in 1 hour. He hung up. You will not see him again, Lorenzo said. Valentina's breath caught. What are you going to do? Nothing that will come back to you. But what neither of them knew was that Douglas was already moving, already calling in favors, already asking questions about the man his girl was having breakfast with. And Margaret Harrington, in her penthouse, was already on the phone with her friend at the Seattle Times social column, planting a story about the hospital nurse who had seduced a grieving widower. The machinery of justice and destruction had already begun turning. The bathroom tile was cold against her back. 3 in the morning. Rain hammered the window like bullets trying to break through, and Valentina Wells sat on the floor in her cramped apartment, staring at the medicine cabinet door hanging slightly open. 17 sleeping pills. She counted them twice. The same number as the dollars in her pocket the night she saved a stranger's life. Coincidence? Just mathematics. Just numbers that kept adding up to the same terrible sum, nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, and a son sleeping in the next room who deserved a mother stronger than this. The foreclosure notice lay crumpled beside her, even though Lorenzo had paid it. $47,000. Gone. Erased. But the psychological weight of it never left her body. The hospital bill-stamped final notice sat like an accusation. She reached for her phone. 3 messages from people she thought were friends. Gold digger. Leech. Stay away from him. Margaret Harrington's voice from yesterday's charity luncheon still echoed in her ears, those careful words about maintaining standards, about people who did not belong in certain circles. Every woman in that room had understood exactly who she meant. Valentina pulled her knees to her chest. The apartment was silent except for the rain. Oliver was asleep, his small backpack packed for school tomorrow, his stuffed rabbit clutched against his chest the way he did when he sensed his mother's fear. She could not let him see this. This moment. This breaking point. She had not eaten. She had not slept. Not since the incident in the hospital parking lot 2 nights ago, Douglas's hands on her arm, his voice like venom, the way he screamed that she belonged to him. The way the restraining order meant nothing. The way the police had done nothing. The way the world had made it clear that she was still his, still trapped, still nobody. Then why did she pull out her phone? 3 words appeared on her screen. A text from Lorenzo, "Are you safe?" She stared at those words for a long moment. 3 words. No romantic declaration. No promises she knew he could not keep. Just a question that meant he was thinking about her. Just enough tether to pull her back from the edge of that dark counting game. She typed, "Yes." She did not know that at the exact moment her thumbs hit send, 12 men in black tactical gear were moving through the streets of Seattle like ghosts. The rain continued outside. She did not know what was coming. But somewhere in the darkness, Lorenzo's machinery was finally turning. At 3 in the morning, the FBI did not care about waking neighbors. Douglas Hale's apartment door crashed open with the sound of breaking wood. He bolted awake, gasping, his arms flailing as federal agents in vests and weapons moved through his bedroom like a coordinated storm. 15 years of evading accountability was about to end in 60 seconds. "What the hell?" he screamed. "My cousin." The lead agent cut through his words with the precision of a blade. "Your cousin Sergeant Hale was arrested an hour ago. Corruption. Obstruction of justice. Destroying police reports. Falsifying records. You are both done." They pulled him from his bed in his underwear, his body trembling as they forced his wrists into cold metal cuffs. His apartment was small, cramped, the walls covered with screenshots from social media, photos of Valentina he had obsessively saved, maps of her daily routes marked with red circles, notes scrawled in his handwriting, "She's mine. Always be mine. She will understand eventually." The agent reading the charges spoke with the flat tone of someone reciting facts that no longer surprised him: stalking, harassment, breaking and entering, assault, violation of restraining orders. 17 counts total. All meticulously documented by federal authorities. Douglas's face went white. "This is a setup. This is," his voice cracked into something between rage and desperation. "You don't understand. She needs me. She doesn't know what she's doing." "We understand perfectly," the agent said. They drove him through the Seattle darkness, rain streaking the windows of the black SUV, his reflection distorted and broken in the glass. By the time they reached the federal detention center, Douglas was crying, not tears of remorse, but the tears of a man watching his universe collapse in real time. The universe where he mattered. Where Valentina belonged to him. Where the rules did not apply to him. His cousin was already in the cell block on the other side of the building. Sergeant Hale, 16 years on the force, his badge stripped, his career atomized, charged with obstruction of justice, corruption, destruction of evidence. All the reports Valentina had filed. All the time she had done everything right and nothing happened. It had been because someone at the precinct was actively erasing her pleas for help. Douglas was led past his cousin's cell. Their eyes met for 3 seconds. That was all either of them could manage. Meanwhile, on the 42nd floor of a downtown Seattle tower, Margaret Harrington was drinking her morning espresso from a cup that cost more than most people's monthly rent. The view from her penthouse stretched across the city, rain-slicked streets, the Space Needle vanishing into low clouds, her reflection ghostly in the floor-to-ceiling windows. She was reading the news on her tablet, scrolling through headlines about a major FBI operation targeting local corruption, when her doorbell rang at 8 o'clock. She frowned. She was expecting nobody. 2 agents stood in the hallway. Not men, a man and a woman, both with federal badges, both with expressions that had seen too much to be moved by her last name or her family history or the fact that she had donated $1 million to the mayor's campaign. Margaret Harrington, the woman asked, though she already knew the answer. Yes, I am. What is this about? Her voice was still confident, still threaded with the assumption that this was a misunderstanding that would be cleared up with a phone call to the right lawyer. The woman handed her a subpoena. The paper felt heavy in Margaret's trembling fingers. We are investigating your financial connections to Douglas Hale, the agent said. Specifically, monthly payments totaling $84,000 over the past 2 years. Wire transfers to his account. Payments for his rent. His legal fees. Court costs. And most significantly, payments made specifically during periods of time when he was conducting surveillance and harassment of a hospital employee named Valentina Wells. Margaret's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. This is absurd. I have no idea who that is. I have no connections to. Your bank records tell a different story, the man said. His voice was like stone. Each payment is time-stamped. Each one corresponds to a documented contact between Hale and Wells. You were funding her harassment. You were financing her stalker. That's impossible. My lawyers have already been notified, the woman said. You are under investigation for conspiracy and accessory to stalking. Do not leave the state. We will be in touch regarding your testimony. They left. Just like that. Like a door closing on her entire world. Margaret stood frozen in her penthouse as her phone began to ring. The first call was from the head of the Seattle Arts Foundation board. Margaret, we need to talk about your position. The second was from her daughter. Mother, what have you done? The third was from the Times, the actual reporter, not her friend in the social column. We would like your statement regarding the federal investigation into your involvement in a stalking case. By noon, 3 news vans were parked outside her building. By evening, she had been removed from the boards of the Seattle Arts Foundation, the Children's Hospital Auxiliary, and the Metropolitan Club. Her photograph was broadcast on every local news channel, the elegant socialite from one of Seattle's founding families, smiling at galas that now seemed obscene. The systematic destruction was neither quick nor merciful. It was methodical. Permanent. A woman who had built her entire identity on being above the law, above judgment, above consequence, now exposed in the singular way that broke women like her, public humiliation. Total social ruin. Every door in Seattle, the one she had walked through her entire life, slamming shut. Lorenzo had orchestrated nothing directly. He had simply handed evidence to people who could act legally. Federal prosecutors. FBI agents. The machinery of justice that actually worked when you had the right kind of leverage. Not death. Never death. Too quick. Too easy. Too merciful. This was permanent. 3 days later, Valentina received an envelope slipped under her apartment door by hand. No postage. No name. Inside was a letter, handwritten, from Lorenzo. It is finished. You are safe. But I understand if you need time. I will wait. She held the letter against her chest and wept, not from fear this time, but from something she had almost forgotten how to feel, the possibility of tomorrow. The rain had finally stopped. The October sky was clearing into something almost like blue. And for the first time in years, Valentina Wells began to believe that she might survive this. That Oliver might grow up in a world where monsters faced consequences. That the word nobodies might finally stop being the truest thing about her. The morning sun breaks through the hospital windows, casting long shadows across the empty break room floor. Valentina sits alone at a small table, a piece of white paper in front of her, a pen trembling in her hand. The fluorescent lights buzz overhead like dying insects. Beeping monitors echo from the ER down the hall. She has written the same opening line 7 times and crossed it out 7 times. Each attempt feels like betrayal. Each word feels like a blade. She closes her eyes. 3 months. That is all it has taken for her entire world to shift on its axis. 3 months since she punched a bleeding man in a diner at 3 in the morning. 3 months since that man turned out to be Lorenzo Moreno, the most powerful person she has ever known. 3 months of stolen moments, of his hand finding hers in dark restaurants, of Oliver asking why this man with the serious face and kind eyes keeps coming to their apartment with groceries and books and a gentleness that broke her heart. And 3 months of knowing it has to end. The letter begins, "You saved me by letting me save you." She stops. That is true. It is also incomplete. The truth is more complicated. The truth is that Douglas Hale is in federal prison awaiting trial on stalking charges, harassment charges, charges that carry 40 years of his life being erased. Margaret Harrington's name is mud. Her foundation is dissolved. The woman who designed a campaign of public humiliation has been publicly humiliated so thoroughly that she cannot walk through Pike Place Market without being recognized, without being avoided, without being seen for exactly what she is, a woman who tried to destroy someone out of jealousy and failed spectacularly. Justice has been served. The machinery of law has worked exactly as it was supposed to work. And it terrifies Valentina more than the threats ever did. She continues writing. Her handwriting is small, tight, the words cramped as if she is trying to make them take up less space, less importance, less permanence. Your world is not safe for Oliver. I cannot ask my son to live in shadows. I cannot ask him to sleep in a house that requires men with guns standing outside. I cannot ask him to grow up knowing that the man his mother loves is the kind of man who breaks other men. She pauses. That is not entirely accurate either. Lorenzo does not break men in the way she means. He breaks systems. He breaks corruption. He breaks the things that have been breaking people like her for decades. But Oliver does not need to understand the nuance. Oliver just needs to be a child. She writes, "I am leaving tomorrow morning. A bus to Portland. New documents, new school, new life. You gave me the chance to breathe. I am going to take it somewhere safe." The pen hovers. She has not written the most important part. The part that will destroy him if he reads it too carefully. She writes, "I love you. I have loved you since the moment you told me I was not nobody. But loving you is not enough when the cost is my son's future." She folds the letter 3 times. Addresses it to the restaurant. To Rita, the waitress who has seen everything. Rita has worked that diner for 22 years, has served Lorenzo coffee at 3 in the morning for the last 8 years, has watched him move through the city like a ghost carrying weight. Rita will understand. Rita will know what to do with this letter. Valentina seals the envelope. Her hands are steady now. The decision has been made. The words have been written. There is nothing left but to move forward. She arrives at the diner at 8 in the evening. The place is half full, the dinner rush over, the late-night crowd not yet arrived. Rita is behind the counter, wiping glasses with a rag when she spots Valentina walking in. Their eyes meet. Rita sets down the glass immediately. Valentina slides onto a stool. Rita comes around the counter and sits beside her without asking permission. Valentina places the envelope on the counter between them. "Tomorrow morning," Valentina says. Her voice is barely a whisper, like a candle in the wind. "If he comes in tomorrow morning, can you give this to him?" Rita picks up the envelope. Does not open it. Does not ask questions. Rita has learned in 22 years of serving people in the dark hours that some stories are not hers to know. "Where are you going?" Rita asks. "Somewhere he cannot follow." Rita nods slowly. She sets the envelope down and reaches across the counter. She takes Valentina's hand. "That man came in here 8 years ago broken. Truly broken. You know, the kind of broken where a person stops being a person and just becomes a function. That was Lorenzo. Function and power and nothing else. 3 months ago, he smiled. An actual smile that reached his eyes. I had never seen that before." Rita squeezes her hand. "Whatever is in this letter, it is going to break him again." Valentina pulls her hand away. "He will survive it. People like him survive everything." "That is the problem," Rita says quietly. "People like him survive, but they do not live." Valentina leaves the diner without ordering anything. She walks through Seattle's October cold, the rain having finally stopped, the air sharp and clean and cutting. She does not look back. If she looks back, she will turn around. If she turns around, she will not leave. If she does not leave, Oliver will grow up in a world that devours children like him, children of people caught between two worlds, the world of shadows and the world of light. At home, she begins to pack. 2 suitcases. That is all that remains of her life, 2 suitcases and a small backpack containing Oliver's drawings, his favorite books, the photograph of his father that she keeps even though her late husband left them drowning in debt, left them with nothing but each other and her hands that know how to save lives but cannot seem to save herself. Oliver watches from the doorway of her bedroom. He is 6 years old and already wise in the way that children of suffering become wise. He does not ask many questions. He has learned that adults move in and out of his life like seasons, unpredictable and beyond his control. "Are we going on an adventure?" he asks. She turns to him. His hair is dark like his father's. His eyes are hers. He is the only beautiful thing she has ever made that did not come at a cost. "Yes, baby," she says. "An adventure." He nods. He sits on the edge of the bed and watches her fold clothes into the suitcase. He does not seem surprised. He does not seem sad. He seems like a child who has already learned that staying is a luxury not everyone can afford. That night, Valentina cannot sleep. She sits by the window in the darkness, watching the October cold breathe visible breath into the air. The city stretches out below her, lights reflecting off wet concrete from the earlier rain, and she thinks about how many people are awake in this city right now. How many people are drowning in their own versions of her story? How many of them do not have someone to punch a bleeding man in a diner and change everything? At 2:17 a.m., there is a knock on her door. She freezes. She knows it is him before she even opens it. She knows by the quality of the knock, deliberate, measured, unhurried. The knock of a man who does not demand entry but simply appears and expects the world to accommodate him. She opens the door. Lorenzo stands in the hallway, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing an overcoat that costs more than a year of her old rent. In his hand is the envelope. Still sealed. He looks at her with eyes that are storm grey and burning with something she has never quite been able to name. "Rita called me," he says. His voice is deep and solid like an oath. "She told me you asked her to deliver this tomorrow morning." Valentina's throat closes. "You should not be here." He steps inside. The door closes behind him. He does not remove his coat. He simply stands there, the letter hanging at his side like a weapon. "You wrote that you are leaving to protect Oliver." "That my world is too dangerous." "It is." "Yes," he says. "It is. But it is not the only world anymore." She turns away from him. She cannot look at him and do this. She cannot look into his face and unmake the last 3 months. "You do not understand. Douglas is in federal prison, Margaret is destroyed, but your world does not change. Your empire does not collapse because 2 criminals are removed. This is how you exist, Lorenzo. In violence. In power structures. In things that break people like me. He sets the letter on the table, the small table where bills used to pile up, where the foreclosure notice sat like a curse. My wife died because I was not careful, he says. Because I believed I could control everything. Because I thought my power extended far enough to protect the people I loved. I spent 8 years after that learning the limits of what money and violence can do. I learned that the only thing I could control was myself. He pauses. His jaw tightens. And then you came into my life like a storm I did not see coming, and you reminded me what it feels like to want something other than survival. Valentina's eyes burn with tears she refuses to let fall. I will not ask you to stay in my world, he continues. But I will ask you to let me leave it. For you. For Oliver. For the life I forgot I could want. His voice cracks, just barely, and the sound of it, the crack in his armor, the tiny fissure in his certainty, nearly destroys her completely. I am tired, Valentina. I am tired of carrying ghosts. She turns to face him. I am nobody. I have nothing. When you met me, I had $17 in my pocket and a hospital bill and a son and the kind of exhaustion that never goes away. I am not enough for you. He closes the distance between them. You are the woman who saved my life. You are everything. The words hang in the cold apartment, in the space between them, in the space between drowning and breathing. The foreclosure notice is gone. The hospital bill is paid. The threats are ended. The detective is in prison. The socialite is destroyed. And for the first time since she wrote that letter, Valentina Wells lets herself believe that she might not have to run. She does not say yes. She does not say no. She simply reaches for him, and he pulls her close, and the envelope sits on the table, unread and unnecessary, a letter to a man who will not disappear, who will not abandon, who will stand at her door at 2 in the morning and tell her the truth that she has been too afraid to believe. The rain has stopped. The October cold is clear and breathable. And somewhere in a diner that has seen 8 years of solitary coffee, Rita the waitress finishes her shift and smiles, because she knows that tomorrow morning, Lorenzo will not be coming in alone. 6 months later, spring has returned to Seattle. The dry October cold is a memory. Valentina walks into Seattle General Hospital for her shift, and everything is different now. She is no longer working doubles. No longer counting crumpled bills. Oliver thrives in a good school, asking questions about everything. Lorenzo kept his promise. He stepped back from the darker operations, handed responsibilities to Vinny and Sal, became a legitimate businessman investing in real estate and restaurants, the kind of man whose name appears in business journals instead of police reports. They live in a house with a yard where Oliver plays. Valentina still works at the hospital because she loves it, because saving lives is who she is. The other nurses know the story now. Everyone knows the story of the nurse who punched the Mafia boss and changed everything. She thinks about strength differently now. She understands that real strength is not found in never falling, but in always standing back up. Real strength is the person who reaches for your hand in the darkness without knowing if you will take it. Real strength is choosing to believe in tomorrow when yesterday tried to destroy you. Subscribe so you never miss what comes next.